Welcome to Cult Favorite, the podcast that would never skip the reunion episode. I'm Miranda Simmons.
I'm Mike Altman.
Mike,
hey.
May I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
You are a fan of the reality TV.
Some of it.
Do you watch the reunion episodes of the
Those
shows
are my
that you
favorite
watch?
episodes.
Really?
Oh, yes. So
Okay.
the reunion. Well, the reunion episode, or the finale episode, which is kind of the reunion episode after the final rose for The Bachelorette, was what had me walk away from that show because of how bad it was.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Love Island reunion shows, my favorite. Love is Blind reunion shows. Love is Blind reunion shows. Those are my favorite because of
It's like the reality.
Vanessa Lachey is just phenomenal as a host.
That's a good name. I don't know.
Nick Lachey, 98 Degrees.
Oh.
Or no, is Nick Lachey 98 Degrees? Yeah. His wife.
Got it. Okay. Well, it's sort of like a reality show of the reality show.
Yeah.
But it's really just an extension of the characters that have been created in the reality show. That's my understanding.
It's a moment. It's often the moment where all of the external stuff
gets brought to bear.
They decide which stuff gets brought in or not. There's oftentimes going into a reunion show where it's like, are they going to ask about this? Are they going to talk about this?
Okay.
And so it lets you know what the producers are going to let be part of the kind of story world of the show and what they're not. Because the internet and social media is like this other character.
Absolutely. You know? And yeah,
and they decide it's like the Greek chorus, and they decide which parts of it get to make it into the show and not.
There's so much curation that happens. Okay.
That's something we
tell the good people who we are, Mike.
We are two religious studies professors trying to understand all of these cult documentaries you can't stop binge watching. And if you want to support the show and help more people find us, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Cult Favorite Pod. And be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a rating and a review. We, according to Spotify, recently passed our, 5,000th?
I wouldn't know.
Download.
Yay!
Yeah.
Well, thanks, everybody. We appreciate you. The views expressed in this episode are our own.
Pretty much, except for the ones I stole from you.
So thanks for listening. And don't extrapolate from our opinions onto the Department of Religious Studies nor the University of Alabama. What did you know?
Don't extrapolate in general. Just really stick to whatever.
I do think that there are some contexts in which extrapolation is okay. We can talk about those later. But we're talking today about the cult of the Real Housewife.
Yes.
Brand new.
Brand's making new on HBO Max.
What did you know before?
I mean, I knew of the series.
You're a fan of the series, right?
No,
Do you watch
I've never watched the series.
Oh,
I will encounter the Housewives will show up on other shows.
Okay.
Like they're on Traders. Like they're a whole.
I see.
They're a whole kind of clique, cohort, force on Traders. There's always a few of them, but that's the only Housewives I know.
I just got a glimpse of what would happen if there was a Real Housewives. You know how British Baking Show does Christmas, New Year's specials. They'll bring in actors from whatever show. That would be fun. A Real Housewives Bake Off.
Ooh, I don't know if they could.
No, it'd be terrible. I'm just kidding.
I don't know if any of them can bake. I don't know.
I knew zero things. I totally thought that this was going to be a documentary about the Real Housewives franchise. Yes. And I was really looking forward to that. And then it wasn't.
I have a Google alert for cult documentary.
Yeah.
And that's one. So I got enough headlines of reviews of this to recognize what it was
about one character.
But I did not realize how much of it, and we'll talk about this in a second, how much of the church stuff was actually on the show. And that raised a lot of really interesting questions for me.
All right, well, let's get into it.
So it's a 3-episode series. It moves really quickly because it's 3 kind of 45-minute, but really 40-ish minute episodes. So it flies right by.
It did move more slowly for me, but keep going. That tells you about me, not the show.
But it has a very basic 3 plot. I'm very much, since the last episode where we talked about the Amanda Yates documentary and
Andrea Yates, yes.
Or Andrea Yates, excuse me. And there was the guy on that whose name escapes me again because it's been a couple weeks. But he talked about like I'm always jealous of other cult documentaries that have episode 2.
Right.
Like ever since that, I'm becoming more and more aware that this cult documentary we were on it, that this cult documentary genre is like becoming self-aware. And this was to me another example of like we're getting a kind of full genre where people where people like fill this in. So episode 1 is really the introduction to Mary Cosby for folks like us who don't watch Real Housewives.
And she's on Real Housewives of
Salt Lake City.
There it is.
And she was in the first season of it. And what we find out is that she is the pastor of this Pentecostal church, Black Pentecostal church called Faith Temple. And we're introduced to her, a number of her siblings, a number of sort of the other sort of cousins and family who make up a bunch of this church that was founded by her grandmother that everyone calls Mama.
Yep.
And we have, so the first episode is kind of that, and it talks about how Mary Cosby gets on the show and how, I think a lot of people expected Real Housewives of Salt Lake City to be like pretty Mormon, but they're trying to bring in a lot of kind of diversity into the cast. And so they do a lot of scenes from her church of her preaching and all of this stuff. And she talks about her church members. But then we start to see very quickly that the internet has a lot of questions about this church. And we get I
just love the agential.
The internet, yeah.
The internet has
stuff.
Questions.
The internet. Look, when the internet has questions.
It's sort of like this essay argues. Well, does it? Anyway, go ahead. I always want a personal pronoun to carry the weight, the agential weight. But I do think that changes. Like, I mean, I think that that just reflects a scholarly traditionalism that is, very, very much born out of the early aughts of my own grad school experience. So I want a personal pronoun to carry agential weight instead of an object. I don't want to. Yeah. But now I think, but I do think that the landscape has shifted, and it does. My own post-humanist critiques would ask questions about what I just said. So anyway, okay.
Well, I know. I think it's a good point because the internet is a character in this story.
1,000%. Yes.
The internet does things. The internet raises questions, and it's represented by a number of sort of Gen Z faces with cool lighting behind them.
Totally. And any one of those people asking questions in their own right, isolated from that internet cyber apparatus, would be a very different phenomenon than what it becomes inside that apparatus.
Yes. Yeah. We need to circle back to the internet. But anyways, so episode 1, it's really introducing the Mary
She
Cosby,
has a church. The internet has questions.
And it also we get the kind of heart of the scandal, the heart of the central tension is introduced because there is a audio leak of Mary Cosby berating her congregation because they did not give her enough birthday cards.
Sure.
I get that. I don't get that. No one ever sends.
I sent you a book for your birthday.
You did.
I did not send you a card,
I'm halfway through it.
I did not send you a card.
It's what I've been reading during my daughter's BJJ lessons. Yay. It's actually really good.
Cool.
More on that later. So then we get episode 2, and episode 2 is, the idea of the episode 2. The episode of this is usually it can be the time when everyone is happy. We get that in this story, and going back in time to her grandmother, Mama, who builds. There's not a ton of explanation.
When the church felt legit to people,
but there is a sense that Mama's legitimate. I have so many questions about Mama.
And just starting a Pentecostal church in the late 60s in Salt Lake City,
and the way there's moments, if you're paying attention, I think, and you're attuned to this, where so one of the central problems is the church, as the argument of the documentary goes, the church is a cult for one reason, because they talk about Mary Cosby as God. She presents herself as being divine, and therefore...
Does she, though? That's your question? Okay, go for it.
Yes.
Okay.
B, there's so many indications that Mama has a greater than human quality, some sort of transcendent quality to her that is talked about similarly, but it's never coded the same way by the production. Like there's hints here and there. Like there's somebody who talks about at the end of the episode of the series, we get the splintered church. Yeah. And they're talking about Mama in ways that are very similar to a number of other Pentecostal figures. Like I'm getting very like Father Divine. Folks can Google that kind of feeling to the whole Mama thing, and it fits with the history of where it was found, how it was founded, and all that. Anyway, so we get a bunch of this of sort of this was Mama's church, and it was good, and Mama married Robert, was her second husband, and then we get where Robert. We get a number of stories from various. Mostly the sons, but a couple of the sisters of Mary who were adopted by Robert. Right. So there's this. I don't know if we ever get a full count, but it feels like there's like 8 or 9 total siblings, of which Mary is one. Mary has a different mother than.
Yeah, they did the family tree at one point, like as a visual, and I should have paused it and like taken notes, but I didn't. So I mean, it's a big extended family.
You get I don't think the ins and outs are that important for the story. What is important is that Robert allegedly is abusive in a number of ways, and
verbally and physically,
physically,
yelling kind of and
militarized. And this is not unusual.
Beatings,
from what we've been seeing.
Corporal punishment for
and then we get by the end of episode 2 is where we get to this place where Robert and Mary decide that they're going to get married. And there's a number of...
So this would be, and this is the whole thing, this is how that is her step-grandfather.
Yes.
So he married her grandmother. Grandmother dies. She has known him as her grandfather since the time that she was a very small child, and now she is his wife.
Right. And in that... that kind of central moment becomes the place to unpack a number of things, including we hear about the ways that Mary, this is later, allegedly had an affair with a church member named Cameron, who actually appears on the show, the Real Housewives show. We also have the story of Mary being kind of kicked out of the church by Mama at one point, and then comes back with Robert and sort of claims that Mama left her kind of the church. And the church also includes a number of businesses which do not get a whole lot of attention, which is interesting. And that kind of, they talk about it, Mama's empire. So in stepping into the marriage with Robert, Mary is basically stepping into Mama's role, which, to your point about the talking about her as God, if they were already doing that with Mama, it kind of just it's taking on the same.
It's funny.
mantle.
I actually didn't. The thing that gave me a question about she is posing as God or as some kind of divine figure wasn't, to me, it didn't land in relation to how they talk about Mama. It was that the clip that they play in order to demonstrate her doing that is just her in kind of emphatic preacher performance saying, I am that I am.
Yeah.
Now,
that could be,
I mean, what is she saying that in a vacuum? Yeah. As in, these are the words of our divine being, and these are now my words because I'm making a similar claim.
Yeah.
Or is she quoting from a passage in the Bible? That is fundamentally unclear, and it is not to say, well, let's put it back in context so that we can really understand what she's really. I don't. Yeah. That's never really my point. My point, though, or my kind of but did she really?
Did she?
If we're going to make that a criterion on which we base our cult label, then we should be careful about how we assign the criterion and what we attach it to.
And the evidence that we put forward for that.
So anyway.
And then the last episode is all about, the second episode, ends with this church service they call the walkout service, in which basically the announcement of Mary and Robert getting married splits the church in two, and half the church walks out. We pick up with that in episode 3 and hear about the ways that Mary and Robert control the church and manage the church, the demands, the demands for giving, the sort of demands to not speak to the people who left. And we get, the third episode is a lot. It's some in the second, but a lot in the third of cult expert, so-called cult expert Steve Hassan, basically running through like a kind of family resemblance model laundry list of what makes a cult a thing, what makes something a cult, and like applying it to that. So we get a lot of these titles, like it's about, control, it's about,
he had 3, right? Like the family resemblance approach is one that looks for commonalities or cross-hatchings across various things. And so his is it power, money, sex?
Yeah. But then he had these other things, like, what did he talk about? Like vulnerability, and
his big thing is mind control.
Yeah.
Like
he labeled it a mind control cult.
Yeah. He's written 4 books on mind control, and mind control is really the central tenet of how cults function for him. Things that he identifies as cults. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we get a lot of that. And then it ends with a very, it doesn't really have a conclusion, and so other than, because there's been no charges filed, there's been no lawsuits filed, the church has been under renovation and basically closed for a while, and so it's kind of been shut down ish. I don't know. And then we get some video from the church that split off, that still reveres Mama, that sees itself as kind of the true continuation of her,
people who've moved on,
of her thing. And there's a very, and that's kind of like, oh, this is the thing that's uplifting and beautiful and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
And that's kind of it.
And she was a very quickly popular character in The Real Housewives. She infamously skipped a reunion episode.
Yes.
Which I guess was
after. So basically season 1 and season 2.
How many seasons are there of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City?
I think we're on 6, or 6 come out. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah. I'd have to look. I'm gonna look it up. But yeah. So she was on season 1. And season 2. And one thing we find out is Cameron, who appears in a little bit on the show.
Yeah, there are 6 seasons.
Yes. So season 6 is not part of the conversation here. But yeah, so the season 6 just wrapped up because they just had the reunion show, or the reunion show is scheduled for the 27th. Part 3 of the reunion. Good Lord, part 3?
She missed the second season's reunion special, and so she did not return for season 3. But she later returned as a friend of the show in its 4th season, and was put back full-time in 5th.
And is she in season 6? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, like if she's put back in,
right here.
Yeah.
I've not watched season 6, so I don't know, because that's not really included in the storyline here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Cameron, the who alleged an affair with Mary Cosby, appears on the show, and also knew Lisa Barlow, one of the other housewives, and there's a theory that he got her onto the show, and there's also a theory that he got her on the show to expose all of this to the public, so it would, as a way to kind of take her down.
The internet has questions.
Okay. And so so that's kind of the overarching.
If we had merch. If our show had merch,
the internet
we
has
would
questions.
make a T-shirt that says "The internet has questions."
Welcome to our production meeting. But also, I've been wanting to do merch for a while now, so we should keep that. I'm going to write that down somewhere. I don't know how that works.
May I just dive in and say that isn't it a cult question?
That's where I went. Yes.
is about as compelling to me as whether or not Ross and Rachel would get together on Friends.
How dare you?
Yeah, man. And that's the thing, is that it seems to function, both questions seem to function similarly in kind of pop and media culture, so that if you are invested in these characters, this becomes a relevant question. It seems not to matter outside of us. It's like a shadow side of fan fiction, of like people who are invested in the Real Housewives are invested in this question of whether or not this is functioning as a cult. There doesn't seem to be, like, if we are trying to do something with the answer, or if we actually cared about the structure of a functioning so-called cult, well, then we would ask questions about what is adding fuel to that fire, like capitalism or media stardom.
Yeah.
We want those to stay unproblematic. And so it just becomes this question in a vacuum of, is it, isn't it? Did she have this affair or didn't she? Is it gross or not that she's married to her? Like, those questions. And so I think that the stories and the experiences of her sister and her family, and like those are deeply compelling and harrowing, and those are reflective of a web of dynamics that are, you know, any number of things, exploitative being one of them. Abusive being one of them. Like, that's a web of dynamics. But I don't think that we are interested in that as viewers and consumers of. So we have her family talking about things. Yeah. And people who felt on the receiving end of abuse, financially, physically, or otherwise, in relation to this church, or, you know, spiritual abuse, whatever. But then the talking heads in the superstructure are internet personalities. Adam Cohen, isn't that his name? Andy Cohen.
Well, he's not in. He got footage of him appears.
But he plays an important part. Stephen Hassan, like, it is a kind of I don't find the question interesting. Is it or isn't a cult? What if yes?
I think
then what are you going to do about what is this a causal claim? Because it never seems like a causal claim. It only seems like a descriptive fact of the matter that the internet has questions about.
Yeah, the internet has questions, and the documentary is here to answer them. But I agree with you. I don't. So the way it's presented, in the documentary, like if we take it on its own terms, is this happens on the show, and the investigative reporter Cheyenne Roundtree,
right,
who's very central to this, is the one who actually kind of says, I wanted to find out, is this a cult or not?
Sure.
And so I went looking
Which she has every right to do. She's an investigative journalist, and that's a fair...
And she has a story in the Daily Beast.
Dig into that church, man.
Side note, again, there's always an investigative journalist. Like, there's very often with these.
I am never as mad at the investigative journalist as I am at the so-called cult expert, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Well, that's the two sides of it, right? Like, you have, I'm thinking back to the One Taste documentary. Like you have the investigative reporter who writes the story on the internet, and that becomes, like, it's pretty, like, that becomes the basis for, you know, the documentary.
But the cult question in this case seems to me like a reality TV character question.
Yes.
In the same way of, like, did this person really care about her boyfriend when she said this, or did she not?
Yes. Is Whitney really that terrible?
Yes. It is and so then the questions asked by the internet are questions that are fair and fine to ask, but are reflective of a context of fandom. I watch this show, and so I am invested in this character, and so I have questions about her intent, or I have questions about, and
that's where I think it's okay. I'm gonna Here's the
maybe
challenge
Ross
for this
and
episode.
Rachel made a wonderful couple, but maybe they shouldn't be together. I'm gonna
make this question interesting.
Okay.
So
which question?
Is this a cult?
Oh,
because it's
give
not,
it your best shot, bud.
Well, it's not. It is not interesting on its own within that context.
Yes.
But I think it signals something that is really interesting, and that is that the documentary is, I don't know if it's purposeful, but is definitely kind of hiding.
Okay.
They put this on the show. Mm-hmm. They put her on the show maybe because Cameron made this connection. Mm-hmm. But the fact that she had this position and this church mm-hmm. was one of the reasons she was cast. And then when it became these questions about a cult came out, they brought it into the story world of the show. So if you're thinking about this, if you separate like the world of the show as a reality show from whatever is outside of it, I'm not going to call that the real world. Mm-hmm. Then like everything that gets put into the show is very much determined by producers. There are plenty of other reality stars who have things as problematic as this mm-hmm. that never make it in. See the Duggars, right? Like if you compare 100%. This to the Duggars, you could have made an entire Duggar season that was now about...
But we're not showing them disciplining their children or whatever.
Right. And if they wanted to, that could have been the turn.
Well, and also don't you think that wasn't she also a useful contributor to that cast because she's an exception that proves the rule? Like she's a woman of color, she's a Pentecostal living it, but she fits fits the mold of beautiful, rich lady who lunches, but she also has, But
the way the documentary talks about the show, it talks about it like it's like a natural disaster or something that just happens. Uh-huh. So Robert being on the show in the second season, and then not
as if that wasn't a choice,
it was not as if that's not a choice. Yeah. And then when he leaves, so when we talk about, I really do think it's about the internet has questions. Mm-hmm. The whole point of the show is to get the internet to have questions.
Yes.
And so if
that
we
fuels
think
viewership and
right. And so in some ways, like the reason I actually think is this a cult or not is interesting is not because of the question itself, but the way that it shows the producers. And I guess I will fall back on wrestling terms. The way the producers are like working the audience, the way the producers are to the point that this documentary is now taking part of this kind of transmedia story world.
They've presented the elements that beg the question.
Yeah. Nothing in this documentary violated the canon of Real Housewives world. Right. And what would be talking to a producer. What would have been interviewing. There are the people who show up, who they interview as experts on the show, all are influencers who regularly talk about the show. And so they're engaged in the larger like discursive world of the show. So they're inside in that way. Right. And so I just think that the documentary that I think that wants to present itself in a way that's alongside all these other ones. Like it's released at the same time as the Andrea Yates one with the same two directors, Ellie Hakami and Julian Hobbs. Uh-huh. But it's taking a very different track where that's true crime in a certain way.
All of it's true crime and all of it's cult and all of it, I don't know.
But they're positing, like I think they're positing a generic difference in the way that one was presented in some ways versus this one that is just an extension of all of the TikTok videos about this question.
Right. Okay. I got you.
And so I think at a kind of storytelling way, I find it interesting as a kind of kayfabed world that is just sort of like ballooning and expanding. Mm-hmm. And then the ways that Steve Hassan is brought in to kind of authorize the category of cult here in order to like
It doesn't question or trouble the framework of the Real Housewife franchise for sure. Same is true about something called the prosperity gospel. They're not in so many respects, in so many of these documentaries, it is always an exercise in identifying a specific thing that is an exception to the rule instead of an exception that proves the rule. And, I always find it useful and interesting to point that out because they are never cults in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So, Stephen Hassan, if we can just quickly, former member of the Unification Church, AKA Moonies, if you're being, colloquial and snarky, he is there to describe cults, right? Because he's the cult expert who's going to tell us that cults are this and they have these characteristics, except he inevitably, obviously, cannot help but use words like usually, typically.
Yeah.
And so just I have questions. Just like, what is the point if cats are usually fluffy?
Right.
But not always, because hairless cats aren't, and those are still cats. I just don't, what is the point of saying cats are usually fluffy?
Well, because it's followed right by a fluffy cat.
It does not help me identify cats in the world.
Right.
Because so are grizzly bears.
Yes.
It is functionally empty as a content-driven category cult. It is functionally useless to me.
I think particularly the way Hassan sketches it out in this documentary.
Yeah.
Because there's the idea that there's mind control cults that have undue influence over you and other things that are not mind control cults, which somehow feels like if you're not in a mind control cult, you're somehow free. There's you know what I'm saying? Like as opposed to recognizing that there is coercion at every level all the time.
Yes.
And different levels of coercion in different ways.
Yes.
And we can talk about those ways that people are coerced.
Yep.
But when you start using mind control, it presupposes that if you're not, my mind is free and then my mind is controlled. As opposed to recognizing the prison of ideology we all find ourselves in.
Yes. And so the reason that it's worth talking about and analyzing, in my opinion, is that I got a little of, it's functionally useless to me, I say, but the functions of the usage of the term, boy, oh boy, those consequences are many. And there are real attachments and relationships that we have to the classifications that we make and the labels that we use. And so calling something a cult has real consequences, even if and when. And so I think the consequences are especially frustrating when they clearly are not presented as a causal claim of we want to identify this as a cult so that we can bring this specific kind of lawsuit against it because there is a special mode of legislation that none of that. It's just gonna be, we want to answer the internet's questions.
Yes.
And feel okay about, which is the prerogative of everybody on the internet.
But it does, I guess what's interesting to me is it signals, I was not aware that there was this much cult conversation happening on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And so what's interesting to me is it shows that thinking, that the cult label, the cult story, the cult as a category is now showing up in this other space. And now this documentary is sees it over there and is sort of bridging between this divide in a way that I think is really interesting, right?
It is really interesting, but I don't think there's a divide because I think that Stephen Hassan is using the same amount of sophistication when he talks about something called cults as the Real Housewives themselves.
Sure.
And so the functional usage of that label is the same. They're not engaged in cult discourse. They're just talking about in the same way that they would about whether someone's, I don't know, like whether her bag is real or something.
Yeah.
Like it's the same level of yes, no questions of binary thinking that are up and running in both domains. And so, I feel like it is, anything is fair game on reality TV, it would seem, because everybody is, like, it shouldn't be, but it seems like it is.
Yeah.
It seems like producers can get away with all sorts of stuff because they're really the ones literally and figuratively running the show. But when we invoke so-called experts to give us the real goods about how these groups operate and function and what they're, describe these things to us. Like,
okay, so
is really, really, really frustrating because we can't see that they're doing the same binary thinking.
Right. But I think Steve Hassan plays the same role as the ringside doctor in professional wrestling.
Okay.
So in the show that I watch weekly, AEW, they have Doc Andrews.
Okay.
Right? Doc Andrews is this very large, ripped guy who's also a sports medicine doctor.
Yeah.
If a wrestler in a match accidentally slips up and breaks their ankle, Doc Andrews runs out to help them, like in a legit way, right? But if they need to do a storyline where somebody gets their ankle broken, Doc Andrews also runs out as if their ankle is broken to help them.
True.
And so what Doc Andrews does is provide a sense of outside legitimacy to the thing that we all know is fake to some level.
Yeah.
Right? But in doing that, because they also leaves the audience constantly wondering, did so-and-so really get hurt? And so the whole point is to keep the audience, is to keep the internet asking questions.
Totally.
And so here, Hassan does the same thing. Like, he's now not just Steve Hassan, the author of 4 books, et cetera, but now he's a character in this larger story world of the Housewives that can come along and say, it is a cult.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but remember when we were talking about The Biggest Loser? So Dr. Huizinga maybe plays a similar role as the kind of medical authority that's functioning to, but Dr. Huizinga, who, whatever, like, he has made his career in popular domains as well as in the medical profession, whatever. But he at least, for whatever he did or didn't do that contributed to the abuses on that show, he has at least a modicum of self-reflection about, man, if I contributed to the abuses on that show, that is the opposite of my intent, and I'm so sorry. And I'm not making a claim about whether he's right or wrong or whatever, but just that little dose of self-reflection, just the willingness to put those words to it, whether they're genuine or not. Like, I appreciated that as a, like, you play a role in this larger machine. You are a cog in this machine. And while you are not making the production decisions, you are a cog in this machine. And I wish that the experts could use a modicum of self-reflection about our own function as a cog in a bigger machine and how we contribute to the larger narrative that's being produced and curated and brought to bear on what it is that people are talking about.
I think that's
instead of just saying, I am the voice of objective authority, I'm going to tell you how it goes and believe me because I'm a cult expert.
I think that's right. 2 things on that. One, I don't know that they actually ever showed, like, Hassan's comments in the documentary are all abstract. There's never a point where he takes a piece of, like, an example from the church or from Mary Cosby and then says that is an example of blah blah blah. What happens is it's almost like they just interviewed him.
No, that's right.
They interviewed and asked him about mind control cults in general, and then they splice up his little lecture on mind control cults next to the details that they want to pull out.
Which
so there's not even, my point is there's not even reflection, much less self-reflection, right?
Yeah.
Like he is quite literally
yes, he is
giving
only
them
ever
what they're
about,
this, I am the purveyor of these goods. Here are my goods, put them in your thing. Great, right? On the flip side, the other thing about this, I think is that this documentary is a remarkable example of the machine you're talking about working. Mm-hmm. So if you are able to kind of step back, because especially I think you having no investment in the show or anything. No, I think if somebody who doesn't have any investment, you're going to sit back and you're going to realize like, okay, all of these talking heads that are in this documentary, they're all like the ones who are all talking about Housewives all the time. Like literally they all have gigs where their job is to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
And I want to be very clear very quickly that my not being invested is not at all some sort of qualitative claim about the things that I care about as somehow being more legitimate. They're not. They're definitely not. I care about all sorts of things that people think are total noise. So lest my fandom be pitching itself as holier than thou, I do not mean it to be.
But you have these people who and then all that's based upon views and likes and comments, right?
Yes.
Which is just more people also wanting to talk about this.
Yes.
And so the whole, like, to me, I'm intrigued by this in the ways it reveals all of these people trying to draw an audience and get an audience. Like, to me, it's all just people. It is audience manipulation is too strong a word, but it is about getting that reaction.
I don't think it is. I think that there's, like, if we're so interested in mind control, like, then why don't we think about like media production and reality TV?
Well, I think,
Stephen Hazan.
Yes.
Like, would we call that a cult? No. Then.
Well, and it's a kind of it's a really good example of the kind of effective convergence, which I think some people have taken Henry Jenkins' idea of convergence culture and spun it this way, of like the way in the current mediascape, like properties, producers, creators are constantly trying to get an effective reaction from their audience because that's what's monetizable. And so literally the whole point of the show and the documentary is to get the internet asking questions. 100%. And so the whole thing about, is this a cult or not? It's going to be great
for ratings for season 6 or whatever.
Right. And the whole thing about, is this a cult or not? The question is actually not there to be answered.
Meanwhile,
it's only there to have a take on.
Meanwhile, I am glad that some of her family are getting the peace that they deserve and are moving on and living their lives. I am glad that they had a space to tell their stories. I do not for a second think that the people who are weighing in with yes, no to is this a cult care much about their stories. It's really just about, I'm going to use their stories as evidence to continue weighing in on this thing about the character I really care about, who is Mary Cosby.
Yes.
And so we're just...
Which by the 5th season, the fans of the show have kind of moved on.
Which is also why we only ever need like one cult expert in any of these documentaries, because we're happy for them to function as, okay, this is the voice of authority, backing up our very shallow use of the term and letting us then continue to use it with impunity, but with no real consequence that would hold anyone to actual account.
Well, and I think part of that is because the people who made this, like the directors are reality TV producers of not of these shows. But of a number of other like Life Below Zero and these other reality shows. So there's a sense of like, I think that's what's important to kind of trace with these is the documentaries that are kind of made by producers who are part of this kind of celebrity world versus the ones that are made more from the outside. So like if we think about like the first season of Shiny Happy People had scholars of reality TV in the conversation about the show to explain kind of what reality TV does. And while it didn't get comment from the producers, there were conversations about production contracts. Like the producers were a character in the story they were telling.
Sure.
The opposite is happening here, and I think that's indicative of kind of like how much of the curtain they're willing to reveal, and that like the producers are never mentioned. The idea that like once the show is showing the church, we're now in a new world where this version of the church is a produced version. And then once we're talking about is this a cult, that question shifts from the questions that are happening amongst those who are being harmed to a question that's happening on the show within a particular thing. And so that what this treats it as it's all one world, right? And so it's actually trying to, by calling itself a documentary, by being on HBO Max and it's not on a Bravo network. So this is not connected to Andy Cohen's Little World.
Yeah.
It's now making it seem like this is an outside real world. It's again, to go back to wrestling, it's claiming to be a shoot, but when you pay close attention, it is still part of the work, part of that audience engagement. It's doing fan service. It's part of that world. It's not, separate from it in the way that other documentaries we've looked at have been. I think. So what's your takeaway?
I was just learning that there is such a person as Adam Cohen, who I miss, a Canadian singer-songwriter who, maybe we should check out. My takeaway is that for as much as we seem not to like cults, the people who are brought on to talk about how gnarly and dangerous cults are also rely on that category cult to make a living. And I think that the label cult has made a nice career for some people, including Stephen Hassan. And I'm not saying that he's a good or bad guy with good or bad work, like whatever. I'm just talking about the functional usage of a category that is substantively contentless. Like if we're just talking about power and the abuses of power, well, that is much more expansive than the category cult. So with that said, they are literally profiting off of the very classification that they seek to undermine. And like
if Hassan got his way and there weren't more cults, what would he do?
Well, and I'm not saying that, again, like, we get to write books about stuff. It's not, there are suggestive claims lurking beneath our work always. And I think that being reflexive about our positionality so that we can air out some of those suggestive claims and thus make them a little more compelling would be pretty useful. I just kind of looked him. I didn't do a deep dive, but just two of his recent titles, these aren't books, these are essays, but like from 2024, Understanding the Dark Side of Hypnosis as a Form of Undue Influence Exerted in Authoritarian Cults and Online Contexts, like implications for practice, policy, and education. The number of suggestive claims just in that title, or from a handful of years ago, The Anatomy of Undue Influence Used by Terrorist Cults and Traffickers to Induce Helplessness and Trauma, so creating false identities. Come on, man. like you want to define any, like, no, we're going to take for granted that influence is okay.
Yeah.
Undue influence
yes.
is kind of dark and creepy. What makes it undue? Is there a clear threshold? Nah, it's usually this way. It's like we rely on adverbs to carry all of the weight of our adjectives.
Well, it's constantly being backwards engineered.
We should describe our adjectives better.
We should describe. Well, it's constantly being
authoritarian cults. What? All right, man.
But it's
Whatever.
constantly being backwards engineered because he'll say that, and then he can look back at a thing and point to it.
Right.
But it's not undue until it does something that we don't like.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the terrorist cult. Come on.
I think that's.
I don't know.
Okay.
Just think he's participating in the very kind of blanket discourse that one might say is utilized effectively by leaders of small groups that are trying to ostracize themselves from a society that they paint with broad strokes about being a terrible thing that we need to extricate ourselves from. Just putting that out there.
I think it's funny.
I'm not saying Stephen Hassan is a cult
things that
leader.
each of us get worked like.
Oh my God!
To me, that's
not that interesting. It's not that important.
It's not. No, it's just it's what people do. It's like he's a worker.
Well, exactly.
Like,
but that is what people do. And so when we call them
like what he's
cult
doing,
leaders,
what he's doing is just he's a worker. Like he's got his gig, he's got his gimmick. This is how he gets what he gets.
No, 100,000%.
And so
I think that when except I guess maybe I'm defensive about it because I take our job really seriously. And I think that because
as do I, very seriously,
scholars and the I think that we have to be methodologically careful and specific. And so when we talked about this a little bit recently, but like I think that there are while none of us is immune from blind spots and those things appearing in the work that we do, and like 100,000%. And the best we can do, because we all have those blind spots and because we are all speaking from a specific context and positionality, is to be really specific about our methodological commitments.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It reminds me of the way UFC fighters talk about pro wrestlers, right? No, but like what I'm doing is specific and clear, and that not that you're calling Hassan a phony, but
no, yeah, like he's doing the work in the same way that I don't know.
But like, there's a thing where it's so close that it's like no. We would not want folks to confuse what we're doing here with what Steve Hassan is doing in his stuff. And I get that 100%.
Well, I just don't want them. I just wish that they didn't play so fast. And I wish that the producers of documentaries didn't play fast and loose with the labels that they use to describe who it is that they're talking about. And my guess is that the people that are showing up to be interviewed get to offer their own labels.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a cult expert.
Yeah.
And so this is going to represent me as a cult expert. And so fine, I get why you would want to use their labels instead of, but then you got to be extra careful about how you position them and frame what it is that they're saying in relation to these other things like you were talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's anyway.
My takeaway, one piece is that cult as an empty category like you're talking about makes it the perfect category to make the internet ask questions.
Yep.
Which is why it's a perfect category for reality TV producers to
ideological
deploy,
container, man.
and a perfect storyline to have on a show.
Yep.
And because everyone's going to want to make a 30-second TikTok about why this or this isn't a cult or what a cult is, or I had this cult experience. That's like the one that Mary, so 100%. And I think what's the other piece of this is that in a lot of these documentaries, the reality TV producers are never part of the explanation for these things. And so you can't talk about the documentary without talking about the casting producer who decided to cast Mary Cosby, without talking about the producers who decided to put a cult storyline on, who decided to go to her church. Like it doesn't make any sense to talk about this without talking about the ways that Housewives fans apparently are different. There's been a lot of pushback on various dating shows for casting terrible people. And it's like, why would you cast them? Why would you cast them? There doesn't seem to be that with the Housewives fans in the same way, probably because they're seen as kind of separate and different and special. But the producers still have that same role, even if they haven't been called to account by the fan base. And then I think too, what this shows through through that is like the media for cult discourse. We've talked about it's all over TikTok, it's all over, like Reddit, social media. And the media for these conversations about the Housewives are the same platforms and share some audience. And so it's a real stroke of genius if as a director or producer to be like, I have ready-made fans of Housewives here. I have ready-made fans of cult docs here. They have enough in common, but enough difference that we can easily get like that pitch meeting seems very obvious to me. But I think it reflects a way that reality TV isn't showing up on this in our shows and in our episodes just because I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's showing up because these two things are running into each other over and over again.
Sure.
And I think that's an interesting kind of media story.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. The internet has questions. And it can use those questions to manipulate people.
We have answers for you, internet. We have answers.
And so that is its own algorithm of coercion. And again, thinking of personal agency inside of those algorithms is really complicated. I don't know if a cult favorite can be like a point someone makes, but that's what I'm going to offer today, because I already used as a cult favorite the recent Sarah Marshall podcast, CBC podcast, The Devil You Know, about the Satanic Panic. I have finally finished it. It's very good. So my recommendation stands. But in the final episode, she talks about the kind of joke, throwaway phrase that we have about drinking the Kool-Aid. And we talked about that when we covered the Jonestown documentary. But she talks about it in relation to, when we don't want to face something, we sort of cover it with a punchline.
Yeah.
She describes it that way. And she uses that as a, we use that phrase, drink the Kool-Aid, to talk about lots of different things. Her examples were like, getting really into Pilates or trying a new meal kit plan or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's always descriptive of, it's always used to describe personal choice. I drank the Kool-Aid,
right?
And what that masks, just things we don't want to face, is this much bigger dynamic of and this bigger infrastructure of coercion and control that really warps any kind of notion about personal agency that we would like to have up and running when we talk about choice. And that's something worth keeping in mind.
Yeah.
So, good. Be careful with the jokes that we make, but also be careful with the way that we understand autonomy. And on the flip side of that, also something called brainwashing or mind control.
Yeah.
Because that's more complicated than what it sounds like as well.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Go back to episode 6 on Cult Massacre, One Day in Jonestown. From August of 2024.
That's when
when we talked about that. We have shows that were done in August of 2024.
The punchline was me telling you that nothing was going to be okay.
My cult favorite, I can't remember if I mentioned this or not. So if I already have, sorry, but I'm sure that
you like it that much.
I do.
It's sure.
Dropout.tv is a streaming service of independent, mostly improv comedy shows that I love so much. It has become a thing. I watch it. We watch it a lot of times in the evenings with the teenagers. And it's a number of different shows and a kind of rotating cast of people who do these different shows. And it's hilarious. And the CEO, Sam Reich, who runs it, I've seen interviews with him, he is very into like workers' rights, and he shares the profits of the company with all the employees. That's wonderful. They pay people when they audition. So it's like, I think it's like $6 a month or something. But it is a show, and because the different shows have this rotating cast of people who appear on the different episodes and it's kind of all connected, you kind of feel like you're in this, like as you're watching it, you feel like you're kind of part of this like weird community. It's weird. It's very interesting.
I just pulled up the website, and it is it's like a barrage of what lands for me as very much visual sensory overload, but that sounds terrific. If you can, if you can hang with it.
Yeah,
but I'm probably
maybe it's not as bad on Apple TV, I guess. But yeah, I've always loved improv comedy, and I've always loved that sort of stuff. So check it out, dropout.tv. All right. Thanks for listening to Cult Favorite, and special thanks to the Department of Religious Studies and the REL Digital Lab for making this possible.
Yes.
And we don't know what we're doing yet, so we'll do something in 2 weeks.
Yeah, okay. We really should have that production meeting.
It'll be a surprise. See y'all then.
Okay, I know you're late. I'm gonna run, and then we, if.